We were hoping to have Honorable Minister Ministers in person to address us, but no, we have Honorable Foreign Minister. We had him until 2 days ago in the exactly other side of the globe in Brazil. He just returned yesterday morning from Brazil from G20, we all know. And tonight he is again traveling to another part of the world. Naturally his responsibilities entail such kind of travels. Although he was very keen to come and in person address us, schedules did not permit. But he was very kind to agree to give a virtual address, not a video address. He is very much there in front of us virtually. So we will listen to his address. He will address us for some time, and he has also kindly agreed to take a few questions, time permitting. So without taking any further time from my side, I am going to request Honorable Foreign Minister of India, Dr. S. Jaishankar, to address this 8th India Ideas Conclave. Sir, over to you.
Thank you very much. Namaskar to all of you. Manya Ram Madhav ji, dear friends, it is a great pleasure to join you at the Ideas Conclave, even if I'm doing so virtually, and to share with you my ideas, my thoughts about building brand Bharat. Nations, like people, enterprises or services, have a reputation. When deeply entrenched into consciousness and easily recognizable, that becomes a brand. Obviously, it is related to the merits of the product and its track record. But there is a marketing endeavor in play as well, which could have an aspirational aspect to it. Brands are also about the future, one that can be credibly extrapolated from the present and from the past. When it comes to a country, the national brand is obviously a fusion and an aggregation of different facets of its life and activities. On the global stage, it is much more an integrated positioning of multiple endeavors, and we in the world of diplomacy have that responsibility. My thoughts today are about how we discharge that for an India that is more Bharat. Friends, our initial decades after independence saw us struggling with the brand challenge. Given the ground situation, this was not unsurprising. A society recovering from 2 centuries of colonialism obviously had to painstakingly build itself up, creating new capabilities, institutions, and practices. We chose to do that as a democracy, bucking in many ways what was then a global trend, and move forward in a polarized world that brought to bear on us its own geopolitical pressures. Understandably, this was a process of trial and error. We can have a debate about the wisdom of choices that were made in these decades, but at the end of the day, we entered the next century intact as a polity, energetic as an economy, and optimistic as a society. None of that could have been taken for granted, because do remember, some in fact failed to make it. Put together, they also created what was then a brand of that era. The world was clearly seeing new possibilities and competencies in us. Indians, for example, started acquiring the image of being techies. Various challenges also led to the realization that on crucial issues, be it trade, nuclear, or territorial, India would stand its ground and stand it firmly. At the same time, our shortcomings were also on display. Infrastructure lagged behind, the business climate was difficult, talent was not adequately trained, Manufacturing did not advance. The benefits of growth were not percolating down. Our reforms were limited, driven by compulsions rather than strategy. At the domestic level, the talk was more about a potential rather than about its realization. At the global level, we were seen as a sizable player, but about whom there were limited expectations. Now, this last decade has seen a big shift in that regard. Economically, we are now perceived as much easier to do business. The transformation underway in infrastructure is also increasingly appreciated. Whether it is the airports, metros, highways, or railways, the achievements of the last decade stand out, even by global standards. Perhaps nothing has been more impactful than our embrace of digital technologies. When we speak about the size of the volumes of our digital transactions, the magnitude of our socio-economic schemes, or their implications for the quality of governance, the world truly stands up and takes notice. Some of this is also expressed in improving the ease of living for the ordinary citizen. In the manufacturing world, Make in India has moved from being an aspiration to an assertion. The resulting brand is therefore very different now, where the focus is on the pace of our progress and the scale of our achievements. However, it is not just in material terms that there is a shift in how the world perceives us. Increasingly, it encounters Indians in a global workplace. And in an era where demographic shortages are beginning to bite, their value is ever more widely recognized. From personal experience, I can share how much more interested other nations are in the mobility of talented Indians. This is now approaching a level when many are even willing to partner us at home in the imparting of skills and expansion of education. On the flip side, there is a view of our diaspora as being professionally competent, socially responsible, and displaying a strong work ethic. Our brand, to a great extent, is built by these individual experiences of the world with us. It is no accident that many countries with a significant diaspora have now changed their attitude towards India. Friends, leadership and choices are also a big decision in shaping brands. Many of the transformations I mentioned are driven by major policy reforms domestically. On the national security front, a firmer response to terrorism is obviously noted. Similarly, counter-deploying under daunting conditions to combat pressures on our borders is also recognized and respected the world over. A country that was initially the greatest source of concern when the COVID pandemic started eventually emerged as a significant supplier of medicines and vaccines to the rest of the international community. When a startup culture is promoted, when youth are encouraged, and when technology is embraced, both the nation and the world can see how much difference leadership can make. Internationally, standing up for our consumers when it comes to fuel, food, and fertilizer security has certainly been a brand enhancement. So too, the determination to safeguard our citizens abroad, come what may. Many others have the capabilities. Not all of them have shown the willpower to exercise them. While I have highlighted these broad causes, there are some specific events and inflection points that could be said to have changed the world's thinking about us. A recent example is the Chandrayaan landing on the south side of the moon. I was at the BRICS summit in South Africa when many global South leaders were present at the time of the landing. And I saw for myself the deep impression that it made. Even more lasting was the prolific vaccine production during the COVID pandemic. But along with that respect for our industry, there was an even more, I would say, even deeper sentiment about our willingness to share vaccines when those more developed did not do so. Just 2 days ago, I was with the Prime Minister at the CARICOM summit, and I could see that these feelings are still very much alive in the Caribbean. Everybody today sees something of interest to them in India's endeavors. The tech community notes our India stack and 5G technology. The AI and the semiconductor businesses appreciate our talent and creativity. The world of marine shipping and airlines respect our professionalism. Be it blue or white collar, traditional or emerging sectors, creative or executive, we are viewed increasingly positively. This summer, our nation also witnessed the largest democratic exercise ever. As is to be expected, there were passionate arguments and strong polemics in that process. But at the end of the day, the system delivered fully and flawlessly. In today's world, believe me, that in itself is no mean achievement. But beyond the electoral exercise, a deeper democratization process has also been continuously at work. On the one hand, there is a sharper awareness of rights and responsibilities in our society. On the other, especially in the last decade, there is a deeper reach of benefits and entitlements. We can say with great justification that democracy does indeed deliver. It has also been a great leveler which has made all walks of life more inclusive, whether it is our politics, our civil services, businesses, or sports. The widening representation is today very visible. The democratic brand is therefore one of particular value. While recognizing these developments, let us also realize that we are not just one more country. Our history, tradition, culture, and heritage makes us stand out. We are one of those rare civilizations that have made a successful transition to a nation state. In the past, when our overall standing was less, perhaps that did not count for that much. But when juxtaposed, as it is today, with our achievements in so many fields, it now assumes very different connotations. Whether it is yoga or Ayurveda, our cuisine or arts, indeed our way of life, they elicit much greater interest and I would say acceptance. Beyond characteristics and practices, our attitude is also taken note of more seriously. Civilizations naturally tend to take a long view of life's challenges. They also express a certain wisdom drawn from experience. That brand of being balanced and considered is now more deeply associated with our persona. It is in this context that we should reflect on brand Bharat. The very term captures the civilizational aspect while underlining how much rooted we have become. Bharat is a statement of authenticity, be it in representation, articulation, or beliefs. Even our economic energies required a connotation of Atmanirbharta in that background. It is equally a message that we are now more comfortable in our own skin, drawing on our own past and fashioning our own lexicon and advancing our own ideas. In a world asserting its independence from a globalized elite, it is an effort to engage it more on our terms. The formulation of standing on the two legs of technology and tradition is one effective way of expressing brand Bharat. Friends, coming from the domain of diplomacy, we naturally seek to advance that brand in more specific terms. That means defining how Bharat approaches the world. Now, there can be a range of answers to that. The global south sees in us a powerful advocate and a driver of vaccine Maitri. Neighbors recognize a generous and non-reciprocal partner who stood by them during COVID, during financial meltdowns, and during natural disasters. Democracies appreciate a confident partner whose choice has helped universalize their shared attributes. The immediate region and beyond value an emerging first responder posture and a contributor to global goods. And on the big stage, a multi-vector approach engages the Quad and the BRICS, Russia and Ukraine, Israel and Iran, and the global North and the global South. This is the brand of Vishwa Bandhu. With these words, let me conclude my remarks on building brand Bharat, and I would love to respond to your comments and questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for that very comprehensive exposition on the theme building brand Bharat, covering the global aspect of it. And today, our country, Bharat, enjoys a greatly enhanced prestige and honor globally, primarily due to the efforts of our Honorable Prime Minister, but also no less credit should be given to our Honorable External Affairs Minister also, friends. We have heard him highlight various facets of this topic. We can take a few questions. He is willing to take a few questions. What we will do is we will take 3 questions from these 3, then 1/4 question. One of them. Yeah. Please be brief.
Hi, sir. I'm Ritvik Shastri. I'm a student of humanities. Sir, before I come to my question, I want to say you're an inspiration to me, and you're literally my hero. And being in diplomacy, in my eyes, you're the perfect definition of a diplomat. So just like you, sir, I also want to do UPSC and get into the foreign services. So what would be your advice to young UPSC aspirants like me, sir? Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, we will take one more question from that side. Personal advices can be through email.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, sir. Good evening. Mahesh here. And yes, just want to add that you are a perfect representation of brand Bharat across the globe, I should say, an inspiration to all of us. You can be an example of what brand Bharat should be. Now, coming to my question, at the time when we are talking about making India the manufacturing hub and the export hub, same time we are talking about making FTAs with across the economies across the globe, and talking to many industries and getting the FTAs. My question to you is, sir, how you want to balance the making India industrial and export to different countries? At the same time, the FTAs will put pressure on reciprocating, right? So how to balance these 2 aspects which are contradictory, and at the same time continuing with this, how you want to address the US new regime which will put the same pressure on the taxation on Indian commodities?
Yeah. Sir, you can take it. Balancing between FTAs and Make in India dream.
So on the first question, the UPSC question, obviously I agree with Ram Madhavji, happy to give you more detailed advice one-to-one, but really, I would say, look, in any test, any challenge, one has to try one's best. It helps to talk to people who've done it successfully. So, which is why even in any business, you have a concept of mentors, someone who's walked that pathway before you, who can guide you so that you don't learn the hard way the first time. Frankly speaking, do your best, but utna tension nahi lo. That, finally, a lot of the difficult moments in life, one has to be like prepared, but one has to be confident, one has to be control of yourself, relax to the extent you can. I know it's easier said than done, but a lot of it is also attitude. So let me move from personal advice to policy advice or policy analysis here. Look, I do think that it is absolutely vital today that Make in India succeed, Atmanirbhar Bharat succeed. And I'll tell you why. And I know there's been that debate out there in public space, are we capable of manufacturing? Should we be manufacturing? Has that bus not left? Can we emulate China, etc.? But I put to you a simple proposition. We have entered a technology-driven world, and it's going to be radically transformative. It will be revolutionary. A technology-driven world requires a technology culture. It requires, at the popular level, an industrial culture. You will not get an industrial culture if you don't have enough manufacturing. So one part of it is actually the mindset, the attitude, the skill sets of society. The other, which we saw during COVID, but even otherwise, that if for our critical needs we are dependent elsewhere, and if that elsewhere happens to be problematic for a variety of reasons, the manufacturing deficiency is actually a national security vulnerability. So I cannot overstate today the importance of why we should be manufacturing more. And that is why, in fact, in the third term of the Modi government, one of the earliest things we did was to announce this ambitious scheme of 12 industrial zones across the country with the infrastructure to go along with it. Now, how do I set it off against FTA? Very good question. Because in the past, I would say, if I were to audit the 1992 to 2014 period in a way, we didn't push manufacturing at all. In fact, in the first decade of this century, we actually pretty much took our foot off that pedal completely. So the second part of it is in the name of globalization, this mantra of we should be open, we'll be globalized, we'll get the best from the world. We actually hollowed out the manufacturing sector of our country. The SMEs. I've lived in an industrial estate in this country. I can tell you the SMEs have been hurting for the last 30 years because they see unfair competition. They see subsidized goods coming into this country. They cannot compete if we do not protect them. And if we, in the name of an open economy, we allowed other people to get an advantageous playing field in this country. This has to stop. And that is why I would be very prudent on FTAs. I can tell you in every FTA negotiation, there is a kind of an FTA team, including at the ministerial level. We think very long, very hard. We are very concerned both about the social fabric and employment consequences of FTA, as well as the national security implications of an FTA. And I would never sign up to an FTA, and I know the Modi government would never sign up to an FTA unless these very basic concerns are taken care of. And I think that is the departure from the past.
Yes. Go ahead.
So yesterday was Kal Bhairav Jayanti, sir. Today at Namma Bengaluru, India Foundation and WMG are saying Jai Shankar. So with that, I think you're one of the people who from brand Bharat have really got the moves fantastically. My name is Sandhya and I've lived almost 3 decades in the Middle East. The SEPA move of connecting India and UAE and the relationship with Israel, the relationship with Saudi Arabia has made massive moves in the last couple of years. We want to know what is in store for us with respect to, the diaspora and oil, connection from India to Middle East.
Thank you. We'll just take one more question. Yeah.
Okay.
Just one more question.
Sure, sure.
Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Raj, and the question to you is today we talk about interdependencies, and we do not have our own telephone or telecom technology or internet, which is homegrown. The international banking system can cut you off if they want to wage a financial war. Operating systems and cloud computing are not on our own. So if US decides to snap off those, then we are in the loop. So, and there are so many such supply chain dependencies. So how do we tackle this looming threat?
The first question, in fact, I had expressed my views on the FTA. The UAE FTA, the SEPA with UAE, is actually an exception. It is an exception because it has taken care of many of those concerns that I spoke about. We were able to find a landing point, a common ground, which worked for both of us. And I can say in many ways that it has actually increased our exports. It has enhanced the investment flow. It will create employment in this country because at the end of the day, look, I judge FTAs through the metric of employment. That should be, yes, balanced with a degree of strategy. That should be our sort of, in a sense, a touchstone. Now, what has happened in West Asia or the Middle East is very interesting. And I go back to 2015, okay, almost a decade ago. So Narendra Modi had just become Prime Minister. And I must tell you, in that first year, he asked a lot of hard questions about foreign policy. And he asked, it's very interesting, sometimes when a person from outside the field comes, they challenge assumptions and what many of us take as inevitable truths. Okay, you ask the questions which everybody else has put on the side or glossed over. And the question he asked was, here's the Middle East, historically connected to us, such a large diaspora, big energy trade, growing trade in other domains, and yet our relations have sort of stagnated. And the perfect example of that is UAE, which in the last 10 years has seen the most dramatic change. Now, the starting point was, why has no Prime Minister since Indira Gandhi even bothered to visit the UAE? Which was true. Now, the fact was, we actually, we were uttering mantras and homilies to ourselves. But in reality, when you look at what were the moves we were making in the world, is there a strategy? Is there a plan? Is there a follow-up? I think the answer was visible in the results. Now, look what has happened in the decades since then. Every one of the Gulf states has actually seen a transformation in our ties. And with the exception of Kuwait, which for some curious reason didn't work out, Prime Minister Modi has been to every one of them. I go on an average at least once a year, sometimes 4, 5, 6 times a year to a Gulf country. So do many of my ministerial colleagues. Every one of them has seen a trade increase. In many cases, when they have done big recruitments, as they are going up the economic value chain, they have actually made India a preferential source. A country like Saudi Arabia has increased the number of Indians working there by 200,000 in the last 2 years. So if you look at the bilateral relationships, the CEPA is a good example. Look at the concept of I2U2, because again, Israel was another, I would say, ideological gap in our foreign policy, that you had a country where actually no prime minister had ever visited in our history. So when you normalized and more with Israel, and then you built up the the Middle Eastern, the Gulf relationships, and the larger Middle East. Egypt is another example. Morocco, yet another. Jordan. So, and the conventional belief in Delhi was, oh, if you do Israel, you'll lose all of them. What has the last 10 years shown? Exactly the opposite. That our relations with Israel have got stronger. Our relations with the entire Middle East, the Gulf especially, is right up there. You've had good bilateral relations, much broader. I2U2 as a combination, and the IMEC initiative, the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor initiative. So now some of these will take time because these are big ideas. You need a lot of people on board. You need also a certain stability, which right now is not there. But I do think if I were to pick a region in the last decade where we have really built our brand, I mean, you said you lived in that part of the world. Ask people what it was like 10 years ago. Ask them what was our national brand 10 years ago. Ask them what is our national brand today. And I think there can't be a more powerful testimony to our national brand Bharat than what you are actually getting out of the Middle East and getting out of the Gulf. The second question, on the telecom, that whole space, you are right to a large extent, but I would correct you in one part of it, which is that we today have our 5G stack. I think we should be very proud of it. It shows what we are capable of. Remember, we imported the 3G and the 4G. I don't even want to say from where. So the fact is, when we want to do something, we are perfectly capable of doing it. When the government, puts its mind to it, when it encourages industry, this was homegrown, and Bengaluru was part of the 5G stack. I also want to say that. So there are things which we are doing. We need to have that ambition. We need to have that self-belief. I think under Prime Minister Modi, that has been really the big change, which is why our brand is different. Now, there are challenges ahead. You can't, if there is a lacuna, you can't correct it in a term or 2 terms. It takes, a lot of these things take generations to build. But I point to something else again today. Look at semiconductors. That where the government is concerned, we understand today semiconductors will be make or break for a country like India. That the next, as I say, the next world war will be fought on chips. That's actually already underway. Now we have to figure out, are we a bystander and a victim, or are we a player? If you have to be a player, you got to wade into it, you got to make the investments, you got to train the people, you got to bring something to the table. And we are doing that. Already, we had one old fab set up in the early 80s in Chandigarh. Now, since then, the entire the whole semiconductor industry was completely neglected. Today, look at the situation. You have a PSMC coming here, collaborating with an Indian company to set up a fab. You have a Micron, you have a Lam Research, you have an Applied Materials, you have a whole host of companies coming in. Because I think you have a government which has a vision, which has the boldness to back it up with the resources, which has an understanding of the world and of its challenges, and which dreams big for Bharat. So I think, the one word I didn't use when I said brand Bharat, I can tell you, today brand Bharat is seen as an ambitious brand, that we are not, we are not just one among many willing to go with the flow. I think there is a sense today that We'll take the hard calls where we'll put in the resources where we will go our own way where we will stay in touch with contemporary world, and we will go with the world, but be also conscious of what we are and what we will be.
Thank you very much, Jaishankarji. Obviously, there are several others who wanted to ask questions here. We have a very illustrious audience of people from 300-400 audience here, not only from our country, but also from neighboring countries like Sri Lanka, from USA and from Israel also. And we are going to take up the same topic for discussion immediately after this through a very distinguished panel of speakers. Nevertheless, on behalf of all of us, we are very thankful to you. You are not here in person, so we can't extend personal felicitations to you, in-person felicitation to you. Nevertheless, felicitations to you for taking time out to address all of us, but also more importantly for all the great work that you are doing in building brand Bharat globally. Great felicitations to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Friends, we will immediately move into the panel, which will again take up this